Hey everybody, it's Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, and welcome to the feature interview for our September digital issue. We are doing this on a Sunday morning outside at Johnny O's. The weather's beautiful, but Kobie Watkins is in town doing a bunch of gigs here this weekend, and I told him the next time he comes in town, we got to sit down, we got to do an interview. He is originally from Chicago. He's traveled all over the world. He now lives in North Carolina.
Yes.
And so it's a treat for me to be able to sit down with Kobie. I've known him for a long time. Kobie, thanks for being here. I really appreciate you being our feature interview for September. Now, you have a new recording. Why don't we talk a little bit about that in the beginning, and then we'll get in depth into it a little bit more into the interview. It's called Movement.
Yes.
And this is the Kobie Watkins Group Tet.
Yes.
So that leaves it wide open for a lot of different
options. That's right. Thank you. You're the only one that really gets that.
Oh, I get it, man.
Awesome.
It's all about the marketing.
That's right.
The group Tet could be 3 people.
It could
be 10.
That's right.
I like that.
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about this? I know you have a lot of original compositions on this
Sure.
as well.
I wrote 6 of the, I think, 10 tunes, or 7 of the 10. No, it was 6 of the 10 tunes, and then the guys are from Idaho. So I'm gonna leave you with that. And
the guys are from Idaho?
They're from Idaho. All the guys that's on the CD are from Idaho, and this is where I teach currently. 6 times a year I'm there. So very interesting, great sounds, and I'm gonna leave it up to you. It's all about dancing on this album.
The one thing I noticed, and as a drummer, I appreciate it actually, because you know when you get a percussionist CD, it usually starts off with a drum solo at the beginning, and then maybe 3 tunes into it somebody plays a saxophone, but it's really just a drum solo. Right. This was really interesting because it started off, there's Latin feels, there's straight ahead feels obviously, there's a lot of arranged pieces in this.
Yes.
And the thing that caught my ear was that when you would take solos, it was within the context of the composition, so it was, the horns were included. It was almost like an arrangement over what you were soloing about. Was that a conscious effort for you to do it that way?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. And I actually, playing with different people like Gerard Harris, or playing with Bobby Broom, or even specifically Sonny, like grabbing some of those ideas that they would do, I developed them over a period of time and said, oh, well, this is how I want to do it. And I was writing, I've always been writing. Some of those tunes have been there since 2009.
Oh, really?
Written. And then I actually recorded 6 of those tunes in 2013.
Oh, okay.
And so, but it never happened. Like, I went back to the recording and it never happened. It was the worst. I shouldn't say the worst, but it was not a very good recording. None of the guys that played on it was bad. It was just the idea and how the songs were developing. And they were still developing. They weren't there yet. Yeah. These guys on here, Aaron Miller, Jonathan Armstrong, Ryan Nielsen, Justin Nielsen, and they just helped me grow the music and helped me grow the artistry and grow my writing. And it's really a tribute to them, that how this music came about and how it came to where it is now.
So now you also have your original tunes that we talked about, but you also have some other tunes on here from some influential artists, I would imagine. Did you pick those that way, or did they kind of come in with the flow of the recording?
Okay, so Manteca specifically is a tune that Aaron Miller arranged, and we were playing a gig, and he said, oh, let's do Manteca. Or it was from, I think he was teaching, and all of his students were doing arrangements on Duke Ellington tunes. So he had came in with his tune. He's with the students, and he's like, hey, this is my tune. I arranged, So he brought that in with the group Tet, and I like to do standards with the group Tet. In addition to our originals, I like having a standard, like want to do, and not just a ballad. Yeah. I want to have something that's just like connecting and cohesive with the rest of the music. So we brought in that, we messed with it, one gig, and then the next gig it fell into place. And then I asked for everybody on the recording session just to have a tune. So certain people came in with, and I was just like, well, we got to do the Manteca because it soared when we played it. It was something different than just the Manteca. Then I asked Justin to come in with a tune, That's Falling Upward, and then I asked Ryan to come in with a tune, and that's the garambang, which is the three different claves.
I heard that.
So
I heard that. There's actually a lot more clave on here than I thought was going to be on here. Is that something that's influencing you these days, or what?
That just happened. It was not it wasn't a conscious. The conscious part of this album was the writing. The unconscious part was that there was no swing.
Right.
I was just like, oh, we're here in the studio. Oh, we don't have a swing tune. I'm looking around at everybody like, we're not swinging any of these. And it was just by coincidence that nothing happened.
Yeah.
So, and I like swinging. And that's what all I've been doing this weekend.
Right.
Swinging with Gerard
swinging hard,
and Bobby Broom, and so we're having a good time.
Well, so you bring up the standards, and why don't we get into that, because the original composition thing is definitely something, obviously, that you are focused on this recording and in past compositions and things like that. But with standards, and you're an educator, how important is it? Because you always want the students to learn standards, I would assume, so that they know where the music came from, because if they're composing something, they have to have that back end, right? Because I think a lot of kids sometimes want to just jump and start writing originals, which is great, but how important was it to you and your growth process as a musician?
Funny, I want to kind of almost use that back end, that phrase you used, because, and I'm going around the block to get next door right now with that answer. So it's just like, so it's really important if you're a computer programmer, I'm not, or a computer developer, or someone who writes code or develops websites or whatever, you have to understand how to create the JavaScript, and you have to create all of these different things to create this amazing website.
Yep.
Java's old. It's one of the first languages. C+ is old. It's one of the first languages of computer program writing. You have to have an understanding of that stuff to have a really nice website or to develop. Now, everybody's not going to do this, but if you want to know more depth of how your website's being developed, or more depth about how to create something, then you start to find out what that is. Case in point, standards. The depth of our jazz music comes from the standards, comes from these original tunes. Initially, these were original tunes as well,
right?
But they were put in these Broadway shows or Tin Pan Alley shows, and they show tunes, and then jazz musicians took our popular music of that time and created these amazing arrangements of it, but still using the same harmony. Now, these are songs, mostly, or they just took the music from the songs, without the words. And why it was so important, because consciously you hear how the music's developed. You want to hear like these progressions and how they develop and give tension here and resolves here. So you want to know what these standards are doing. Look at the music, or just listening to the music helps. That way, when it's time for you to start developing your ear to write music, you can have conscious decisions, you can have non-conscious decisions, indirection and direction at the same time, and not feel like you are restricted.
Yeah.
Like writing your own music, you want to feel unrestricted. You don't want anyone to tell you, but you also want to love what you're doing and want others to love what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But first, you got to love what you're doing, and not feel like everybody should love it.
Right.
What about you?
Well, and it leads us right into kind of how you got started, right? Because you got started playing in the church.
Yes.
Playing drums in the church. Mm-hmm. So your ear was starting to get developed. And you were learning a whole other genre at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, did you just decide you were going to play drums when you started doing that, or was there other instruments involved? Because obviously you're writing chord structures and everything right now.
Yeah.
But when you first started, was it just I got to play drums? That's what I'm doing.
I wanted to play drums, but I understood, because church music and gospel music, because I listened so much, you hear the tendencies, the resolutions, and the tensions and release, the building.
Yeah.
How to establish that. you're also taught in church how to do it, and you're taught by just sitting there listening.
Yeah.
You're not. No one's verbally telling you have to do X, Y, Z. You got to do this. No, you have to be there as a kid, and you have to really be listening, because it's partially it's what you want to do. It's partially what you're born to do, and then it's part of the gift.
Yeah.
You know, if you're, some level of gift or some level of talent, so all of those things will help you grow from where you are. So that's what it did. It helped me grow from where I was. And yeah, it started out playing drums because one, my influence, and my dad was my influence. He was a direct influence. So he played in church. I had to play in church. I wanted to play in church. It was with enthusiasm. So I was like, oh man, I want to do that. That's first.
Yeah.
And then you start doing it, and then you start to deal with it. The good and the bad.
Well, but also I found, because I started playing in church, my mom was a choir director,
Sure.
but I found that even as a young person, you're all of a sudden playing with people that are better than you. And you don't have to go to a club to find out how bad you are.
Yes. No. No.
So you are playing with people, but in a church setting, it's kind of like this perfect scenario, right? Because
Yes.
you're playing with really good players, you're there, and they're trying to help you with that.
And the discipline is way harder.
Yeah.
In church. There's in jazz, you got the older guys that will help stir you if you're open heart to it. But in church, you have no choice. You either do what they say or you don't play the instrument. And it's the hardest place to be, and the strongest place you're going to learn most of your musical innate qualities and characteristics and rules of
Yeah.
music. And then it's also going to allow you to feel free when you're starting to understand and play jazz music.
Yeah. Well, so you went through church. Were you taking private lessons at all through school, through high school, or anything? Or?
So people laugh at me. I say I never took private lessons on drum set, but I technically did, because my dad actually gave us, a few lessons, just playing simple rudiments, the the ABCs of drum set, rudiments, and then he talked us through, like, don't do that, do that. It should be this and it should be that. So he was a master musician, and that he didn't have to sit us down to a drum set and teach us lessons. He just talked us through, like, what he would hear some Sundays, talk us through it. And that was the thing, or talk us through music in general.
Yeah.
Was listening to something on the radio, the one thing he said was, when you hear a drummer play something, it shouldn't be anything new or something you can't play. You should be able to hear it and dissect it, because from your practice, you should be able to hear everything.
Yep.
From your basic practice, all the simple things that rudiments offer you, you should hear that stuff in your practice. All the different levels of meter modulations and polyrhythmic things, you should hear it in your practice. So if you don't hear it in your practice, then you're not practicing efficiently.
All right. So was your father a professional musician, or he was playing in church, or what was the background of that?
So my dad, he was a professional musician, but he played groove and Afro-centric music. He was right here from Chicago and played Afro groove, Afro-centric music. He played with the Pharaohs.
Oh, okay.
He played with the Dells. And so, so he came up in the CPS school system. He played in orchestra.
Yeah.
Played drums in the jazz band, and then he played, groove and African music. He played congas, And so then, when he married my mom, that's when he started playing in church, and he was no longer professional. He stopped playing in the what we call the secular music scene.
The secular,
Yes, which
better known as the jazz music scene.
or jazz or
rock or blues or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So he was no longer doing that. He had, he had a family now, and so he started took on the non.
He had responsibilities suddenly,
Yes.
so that the church was a great outlet for his music.
Yes.
Because it was only on the weekends.
Yeah, it was well said. Thank you. On the weekends that count.
That's right. That's
on
right.
the day that counted.
That's right.
So,
Well, so how did you end up? You didn't really take private lessons or anything. How did you end up? You ended up at Vandercook, right? Was that
Sure.
the first college experience
Exactly.
you had?
Yes.
So how'd you end up going to Vandercook? I mean,
well-
obviously, for everybody watching here, Vandercook is a music education college right here on the south side, not too far from here. And actually, that's where you and I met, because
Yes,
when I came back
absolutely.
from North Texas, I went there for a couple of months.
Yes.
A couple of strong months I was
yeah,
there.
it was good, man. It was great. No, Vandercook came. I was ready to try and go into the Army.
Wow.
And I was working on auditions or something to go into the. No, it wasn't audition. I was just wanting to go to the Army
To be in the band?
to get out. Well, one was gonna get out of Chicago and be in the band, and then I would come back and do a music ed degree. That was my plan.
Okay.
Like I had like a plan. And so had a conversation with him and my mom. Sat down. It was pretty cool. It was like the first time us three had just sat down, because I grew up in a house with like seven, brothers and sisters. It was,
Oh,
seven
you had a
of
big
us.
family.
Big
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
So, sat down. He was like, "Hey, you should try this place." Richard Davis, the bassist, used to practice clarinet music on his bass.
Oh, that'll
He went
get
to
your
school
chops
there,
up.
right? So he went to school. Richard Davis went to school at Vandercook College of Music, and he would practice the clarinet music, all those E. Bono books and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, that's pretty interesting. He was like, why don't you just try it for 2 years, and if you don't like it, then go ahead and go to the Army.
Yeah.
It's like fair. And so that was kind of like a deal, like a gentleman's deal. Like,
Yeah.
man, that makes sense. Okay, so that's what I'll do. So I went in, I auditioned poorly, and and it
Well,
was.
they had you doing marimba, probably vibes,
Yeah,
and
so
drum
now
set
this
and
is
timpani,
now my
and you were only really focused drum set,
drum
probably,
set,
and
yeah, that
rudiments
was it.
and
And
stuff,
I
right?
was, so I was a non-reader.
Oh, really?
I was a non-reader
Oh.
coming in the door, and so, like I said, I auditioned poorly, but Mark Jacoby auditioned me on a prepared piece. I had to prepare a piece, so I did that. I came in with a prepared piece. I got some sight reading in there, maybe, and then I let them know right up front I had no idea what to do with a mallet instrument.
Right.
I've seen it, but I've never played it, which was great because that's all I did. Once I got through the door, they let me in. I was like, they let me in. I went there. I stayed. I stayed focused, and
You used to be there practicing late, man. I remember, because I
Early
had
and late.
come from college and I was playing a lot of four mallet
yes, you
stuff
were.
at that point.
And I was still on 2. And I was just like, man, I got to get there.
But I remember you in there just practicing, constantly practicing. But the classes there too, it was like all day classes. And then he would be there at night practicing late and doing everything he possibly could. Obviously now I know, catching up,
Yes,
right?
catching. Yes,
Yeah.
I was catching up, and I would be there early in the morning doing scales. So I made sure I had all, because one of the requirements for my jury was, my jury meaning my end of the semester test
Right.
for my primary instrument, was to have all my scales and arpeggios, major keys. So that was my first semester. I knocked it out. Second semester was all minor and arpeggios. Got it. And then, like by memory, up to speed, it was like,
Yeah.
I just did it. It was like every day, just dialed it in. And so, and I slow. Every day was slow. It wasn't fast. I literally used the metronome, and every day was just like, I etched the metronome up slowly but
Yeah.
surely, but not daily. It was
Right.
like weekly.
Right.
It's
Well, and that's one of the things, we should talk about that real fast, the metronome thing, and you tell me what you think. But I think that you learn things and comprehend things and digest things faster if you're practicing it, even if it's slow, in time,
yes,
rather than just like randomly doing stuff because it doesn't stick, even on drum set or anything, right?
that's absolutely right. You have if a metronome keeps you connected with the time, keeps you connected with the pulse, your natural pulse, and the provided pulse. It also tells you where all the other pulses lay. Please use a metronome, no matter what your instrument
That's
is.
true.
Please use a metronome. It helps, and play slow, because your slow is going to help you play fast. I was talking to my brother last night after the gig, and he said, "Well, how do you play so fast, so long?" I said, I'm not thinking about playing fast, but the things that I play fast, I can hear them slow.
Great point.
Because I practiced them slow and developed them slow. So now if I'm playing fast, I can just reach in there and in real time and just play whatever I want to play, because I know where it fits in my limbs, and I know how fast within the scope of the pulse I can what I can do,
Yeah.
what I can't do.
Yeah. Well, so not to digress, which I just digressed, but that was great information.
Sure,
because I mean
sure.
that's like that's something I think anybody could use,
Yeah.
and hearing it from you is going to hopefully help a lot of people. So you're at Vandercook.
Sure.
And you got your degree from Vandercook.
Yes.
And obviously you progressed quickly in Vandercook. Were you starting to play gigs out and play around town in the jazz scene at that point? Or?
I was. It was crazy because my peer, I never knew who this guy was. He came in. He Dennis Winsley came in.
Remember Dennis? Yeah.
He came in. He was playing. He knew more tunes than I did. Let's say that. So he and I would get together. He found out I played drums. And we got together every day for at least 6 months.
Really?
6 months was every day we played just saxophone and drums.
Tunes? Were you like playing down tunes? Yeah.
Tunes and just like form, making sure I could hear the form. What is that? I'm asking him questions. We were listening back to the music. Man, I did my longest and greatest listening sessions with Dennis.
Really?
It would be, we would play stuff and he would throw things in there, and then I'm just like, okay. He's like, you'll hear the melody. And I did. Like, I hear the melody, but then I still couldn't keep the form of the melody. So that's another thing. It's just like, yeah, you can hear the melody. Yeah, I hear the melody, but can you hold the melody in your head, which is the form, everyone?
Well, and that's really tough with a saxophonist because there's no bass, there's no piano, you're not hearing the changes.
No.
You have to hear the changes while he's soloing over what you're doing.
Exactly. So it has to be intense, it has to have storyline, it has to have energy, it has to have movement. Speaking of, there has to be forward movement. If there's no forward movement, there's no heart, then it gets really interesting to play, to say the least. But we were talking about standards, and we're talking about people that like I enjoyed listening to. I enjoyed listening to Art Blakey and Buddy Rich and Dennis Chambers and Dave Weckl. I enjoyed those guys. It was like because the motion in the music that they played was moving forward.
Yeah.
And it was they never sacrificed the chop for the time.
Good point.
It was all within the flow of and then the drummers that I heard from church, it was all within the flow. The groove was happening and the chops was flying, and it wasn't choppy. It was just, it was what the music needed.
Yeah. Well, and so that really was your big kind of breakthrough push right there, right? To get your playing from this level to that level with Dennis. And then you were sitting in and playing gigs too, right?
So going to different jam sessions with him was the next step. And then from there, I got my first gig, jam sessions. To this day, I still go to a jam session. No matter what city I'm in, I go to the jam session. You have to go to the jam session because 1, you got to play. 2, you got to meet people. 3, you got to hear what's going on out here. 4, it's just nice to network, meet people you don't know. So I went to the jam session, got my first gig. Like the following year after Dennis and I met with Bethany Pickens.
Oh, okay.
It was my very first gig.
Wow.
1997.
Wow. Nice.
My first professional gig. So it's like, I was like, oh my gosh. It's like, so, it was great.
Yeah.
It was great. And I, would play with her and we would rehearse. And that's another thing. I came to a rehearsal with her, my first rehearsal with her, and I was unprepared. She sat there with me slowly and went through it. She said, you never, ever come to a rehearsal unprepared.
So you're wasting everybody's time at that point, right?
It was just her and I.
Yeah.
But you're wasting everybody's time. That's right. That's right. So don't waste anyone's time.
And isn't it important too? And I know we're jumping around a little bit, but you've played with Sonny Rollins, with John Patitucci, with Kurt Elling, with Branford, with everybody.
I forgot about John. John's great. Yeah.
but that's a small list. But you guys all rehearse before gigs, right? I mean, isn't there some level of something going on? It's not just like getting together and slopping into things.
Yeah. No, we didn't all rehearse. So a lot of the stuff that I played with Sonny was not rehearsed. Playing with Sonny, it was interesting because yes, we did have rehearsals, but it was like a sound check.
Like a talk through, like, all right, here's what we're doing. Here's
not even really a talk through. It was like, we're going to do these tunes, and we would maybe play them or play a little bit of it, and then go on to the next thing. So, but sometimes the sound checks was 2 hours long of us just playing. And really.
So it's like a rehearsal. Right?
Yeah, it was. But sorry, audience, y'all really missed a lot of the good shit because the good stuff was in the sound check. And I tell people that all the time. Bobby and I, we laugh about that. It's like, man, this is the show right here. People really missed it because I come out of there, man, sweating, like buckets. I'm like, okay, like I brought a change of clothes just to change clothes, you know. So not for the show, but just to.
But doesn't that always happen? Like the first time you get together and start blowing through the tunes. I mean, you start blowing, and then it starts going down. And then the second time you guys play it, you got all right. You know, maybe the solos aren't long, or right. I mean,
but it was most of the time when we do sound checks. It went unless we was if it was an outdoor stage, we wouldn't do too long.
Right.
But if it was an indoor stage. Most of the time, we played for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Just like that was the sound check. It was fun.
So you guys had an idea, but a lot of the other groups that you play in, you guys probably rehearse here and there before you go and do a gig, or even once. Even if you're going out on the road, there's something happening ahead of time, right?
Yeah, there was just maybe one thing just recently, actually, last year. Played in Newport with Branford with his group. Scary.
Were you subbing for somebody?
I was subbing.
Yeah, okay.
For the brother Justin Faulkner, yes. But it was just like, go. Really? There was no rehearsal. Here's the tunes. I was playing Wind Up by Keith Jarrett. The way I heard it was all in 4. I didn't hear it in the mixed meter that it was written in. I just heard it in 4. So like, you know, and with some juxtable, you know, phrases. So and then I, like later on, because that's how I played it, that was the intent.
Yeah.
Before. So later on, I actually found the music. It was a digital copy of the music. I was like, oh, this is actually mixed meter. This goes to 5/4 here, and this goes to. I was like, oops. But I listened enough to that tune where I developed a sense of, well, here's where I'm going to go with this, and this is how I'm approaching it.
Yeah.
You know, so I heard the song.
Yeah.
I kept hearing the song more than I looked at the fact that it could be a mixed meter or something like that. Mixed meter is so great, everyone, but you know, just listen to the song. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting because you know you're probably at a point now where you don't really you know the melody. And you're not even thinking you're in 5 or 7 or whatever because you know the melody. It's like, okay, I know where the groove is. And you're playing at 7, but you're not thinking 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2.
No, and don't do that.
So you're playing around town now, Bethany Pickens, and you're done with Vandercook at that point?
No,
for the most part? You're still finishing it up?
Yeah, I still had another year or two. Another year or two, because I was 97. I didn't graduate till 99.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had a but it was great because I was doing that, and then I started playing with Ken Chaney, and then with Orbert Davis, and things start to develop. But at the same time, I'm still in school, and the stuff is getting like you get into where you need these folders done for wind for all the wind instruments, for all the woodwinds and all the brass. You got to folder this thick of all the things that you need to know. And it's like, hey, you get in there, you type up your paper or type up your homework, and I'm not a typer, and so it's just like, especially then, it's better now than it was then.
And
so
you're playing gigs too,
and I'm
so
playing gigs,
you're like
or I'm going to jam sessions, or I'm going to the
midnight oil, like all
on both sides.
Around, man.
And the 20s is the best time because you have it.
Right.
That phrase just came to mind, young blood. Young blood, like you literally, your blood is so young and so virile and so has so much vitality in there that you can just go. And I don't like to sleep anyway, so I was just like, okay, get this done and get this done. I'm gonna go to the salsa. We went to the salsa clubs to learn how to dance. So you're
learning everything at that point.
Yeah, you're trying to like as much as you possibly can take in, because this I mean, Chicago is a wealth of music. It has all the different genres, and you can learn them authentically, because when you play in these bands, you're learning the authentic style.
Yep.
You don't have to move to New York to learn anything. You don't have to move to LA. You can, if you live here, I hone my entire craft right here.
So you graduate from Vandercook.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do any teaching? I mean, did you get like a gig, like a
teaching gig?
K through 8th?
So I taught beginner band. I taught beginner band in the Joliet area, but it was a Troy school district. And so I taught beginner band. It was 60 miles from where I was living on the north side, so 60 miles there and 60 miles back. And that's my first 2 years. I would go out there. I did beginner band and I did intermediate band, and the beginners. Yeah, the beginners.
Yeah.
Like developed like sitting down with them and playing like clarinet and playing flute and playing tube. But like I had my mouthpiece and we were ready.
Yeah.
And developing those, helping them develop those fundamentals was really, I love that even today. So when I'm teaching a drum set person or a student, I'm making sure that how they sit, how the efficiency, and how they're distributing the strokes, their limbs. And I'm not like wearing them down with like, no, you have to sit up straight, no, you have to but it's like, hey, this is what happens if you sit like this, or if you hold the sticks like this, or if you play and allow the stick to naturally rebound off the head, so then you're not playing into the drums, but you're playing so that the sound comes out of the drums. So just those natural fundamentals poured right over into how I teach drum set, and it's so really cool. Like starting with like drum set now, it's like I start with the first two limbs. Like I teach them the way a child develops.
Yeah,
a child develops with using their hands first, then they start using their feet. And it's like, man, it's almost impossible for you to have a student sit down as a beginner and say, hey, now play this beat with your foot doing one independent thing, this hand and this hand. They do it because they love it, but it's not efficient.
Yeah. All right, so now you're playing all over town. You started playing with Bobby Broom, and that was kind of like another experience, I'm sure, because I remember you playing at Pete Miller's. I think you took over at Pete's, right?
Dana, I love you. I didn't try to take your place.
I remember seeing you like the first gig. We were playing with Bobby, one of the first gigs, and then like coming back 6 months later, it was like a totally different Kobie playing with Bobby.
Yeah. From just learning, he had sort of a blueprint of how the group sound and the scapes and their idiosyncrasies, the characteristics that the group had. So as a new drummer, my job was not to come in and try to be new, but to try to connect where they were first. Yeah. Then, and this is with music too, you find where the music is and then you lift from there. You're the drummer, you have to do that. And so you find where it is, you find the scopes and the energy, the spirit of where they are, and you learn what they're saying. You learn not just the musical language, but what they're verbally saying to you, because it's not attacking you personally, it's giving you direction to the music. So
there was a lot of discussion then. So Bobby really kind of told you his concept on what he wanted, which really helps, I think, right? So you're not just shooting in the dark, and if somebody's not happy about something, it stews for a while, and then it's not happening.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was really good, and he had to say, I want you to play exactly like this. But it's just like, okay, we're in this place, so we should be able to play and hear each other without first of all, without playing too far over the top of other people talking.
Right.
And then two, being able to play so that you hear each other innately and still with energy, and without overplaying, without overpowering the soundscape within the three instruments.
Yeah.
You know, the guitar can only play so loud. Somebody made this statement not too long ago. They were like, what's the instrument that can play the softest? And everybody was like, the flute. They were like, nope, the drums.
That's right.
The drums can play the softest. It can play softer than a flute, can play softer than a piano. It can play softer than you walk, technically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
And so that was part of it, was just like just learning that sensitivity and those qualities of how to play the drums, how to play with, and through playing the music is how I develop my touch. So people always say, what did you do to work on your touch? Did you practice this, or did you do the molar grip, or did you do this? It's like I practiced music on the gig. That's how I developed my touch. Like, so I was just like, you
had all that technique so that you could focus on the music,
I think it was the
technique. You were never worried about playing super soft because you had control over it because of everything, right?
And my intentions, I had the intentions to want to do it, because everybody doesn't have those intentions.
Right.
Some people are just like, that's not what I want to do, so don't ask me to do it.
Yeah.
You know, so I want to be able to sit like right here. I want to be able to have a drum set right here, and somebody sitting, an older lady or older man is sitting right there, and not feel offended about this.
Right.
You know, and no, it's not about them, like making sure that I'm pleasing them, but I am entertaining at the same time. You know, so if I'm entertaining, then I need to be, you know, I need to accommodate their comfort.
Yeah. So that's interesting. That was part of the whole overall thing, because you guys were playing at a restaurant, even though it was known for jazz.
Yes.
It was a restaurant still.
Yeah.
And so you really kind of started developing that whole thing with Bobby that way. And Bobby was sort of like the gateway. So it was almost like you had Dennis Winslet and then Bethany.
Yes.
And then Bobby, it was like the levels kept going that way.
Yeah, I've always wanted that too. Like, I want my escalator, no matter how it excels, I want the escalator to go up. And I never wanted it to be lateral. You know, and of course there's going to be lateral times in life.
Sure.
But I've always wanted escalation. That way it's not, you know.
And there's always and that escalator. Then it really went up, because then you started playing with Sonny Rollins.
Yeah, and then, you know, even before then,
Bobby was in there too.
I was playing with Bobby, but I was also playing later on. I started playing with Kurt Elling.
Oh, that's
Pete
right.
Miller's.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was a duality. That was a duality in community where that was happening. Where sometimes some Wednesdays it was almost encroaching, where I started playing on Wednesdays with Kurt Elling, which is,
was he still doing the mill?
He was still doing the mill.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
I got some of those days, you know, because those
nice.
are, when you really look at it now, those are historical moments. Because I studied, you know, basically I studied with Rob Amster, God bless his heart, and I.
Were you on it with Rob?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rob was one of the best bass players in the city.
Yep.
You know, so you got Rob, you had Lawrence Hobgood, who is a good composer, great arranger.
Yeah.
Then you got Kurt, awesome vocalist. Just his ability to know what the music is, where it wants to go, where he wants it to go. But then you have to be aware enough of a vocalist to know how to support.
Right.
Where to support, when to support, and if there's, again, more musical direction, then listen so that you can help the music. We're not here to be bombastic musicians, but we're here to like make the music do this, grow. Not like if we wanted it to just go like as an arrow, you know. Think about that. It's like if the music was just a bow and arrow for one target,
right.
where would it go? You know, you got one direction. You know,
it'd be a very limited scope right there.
Yeah, so myopic. Yeah. So then, you know, so listening to your elders and listening to those that have had musical understandings or these different experiences that help them grow, and now it's going to help their music grow and help you see and hear their vision. Now you can be a part of that, and then you can pull things away from there that you not want and need, because you want to go and excel in your career as well. So, and just in music.
Well, you had such a time at that point, right? And then how did the Sonny Rollins thing happen?
So then I'm back. Now I'm back with Bobby and Bobby's. But I was also I was working with.
You were doing Kurt stuff,
but
right?
I was I was also still working with Orbert Davis.
Right.
So I was out in New York randomly enough, one of the last IJEs. With Orbert Davis doing, I think it was Sketches of Spain.
Okay.
So I got a call from Bobby. Bobby's like, hey, Sonny's doing auditions. At the same time, I had to go, I had a ticket to go to Kansas to play with Dennis Winslet. And so I was like, yeah, I could do it. When is it? I mean, I got a flight on Saturday, but yeah, I mean, when is it? Oh, well, the audition's Saturday. Well, let me see. I mean, you know, I think I should probably. He was like, you want to do this? you want to do that? I was like, all right, okay, cool. So let me call Dennis and see, you know, hopefully he's cool. I'm like, it's taking me a few hours. I'm like, hey, Dennis, man, I got this audition. It's going to be on Saturday. I'm probably going to miss the gig. You think you could? Like the auditions with Sonny, he was like, oh, you know, hell yeah, you got to do it. He's like, no, man, you got to do that. You got to do that. I was just like, okay. I was like, great, that happened. That was cool. And so I somehow repurposed the ticket. I stay.
Where was he doing auditions? Like in a studio?
Yeah, it was. So it was at oh Lord, where's the name of that studio? It's on 10th and 55th. So 10th Avenue and 55th. I always know it when someone says it, but it's a well-known studio.
Yeah.
So went there. I got there early. I ate. I had some food. I grabbed some. Sat down, had me some food. I didn't know what he was going to ask me to play.
You never met him before either,
I never
right?
met him before. Oh, I did meet him before. I met him, and he told me where to go. Well, his manager did.
Oh, okay.
At that time. So I met him at one of the IJ. He was there to do a talk.
Oh, okay.
He was there. He was on a panel. He was there to do a talk. Just before he had done that talk, just after he did the talk, I was standing outside waiting. I said, I'm just standing. I'm waiting on Sonny to come out. And so he comes out. His publicist is there. His manager is there.
Like everybody
he's got his nephew, Cliff Anderson's there. Hi, I'm Kobie. Bobby sent me for your audition. Oh, yeah, how are you? He was like, come on. So they were getting on the elevator. So it's on this big freight elevator, and it's like, 6, 7. How you doing? I'm okay, Mr. Rollins. And so he's like, okay, Peter's gonna get back to you, and hopefully you had a good day today. He was super, student, cool. I remember just the elevator, like his publicist Terry was right there, and Cliff Anderson's. I was like, what in the world is going on here? It's like, how does this work? It's like, this is crazy, right? So just like, he's like, Peter's going to contact you, make sure Peter has your number, you have Peter's number, and you're going to meet at Carroll Studios. That's the name. It was Carroll Studios on 55th, and but he didn't say all that. He's just like Carroll Studios. Yeah. So Peter got me the information. I think he either emailed me or called me, let me know where time to be there or whatever. I got there, ate, got me some food, got there early and stuff. It's raining outside that day, so I'm just like, all right. Then
is there a bunch of people there trying out, or
no?
It's just you?
So I get there early and I don't see anyone else. So I'm like, hey, I'm here for Sonny Rollins' audition. They're like, oh, okay, great, just take it. Can I sit here? And he was like, yeah. So I was like, great. So I sit there, and I actually fall asleep for a second. So now I'm really
wow, you're really stressed out apparently. Guy's sleeping, he's eating, he's like whatever.
So I'm super comfortable or something. So then he comes in, they come in finally, and we go to this room. Bob Cranshaw's there.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
And I think I had met him once prior to that, and I was like, oh hey, how you doing, Bob? And he's like, good to see you, blah blah blah. And so then
he's been playing with Sonny forever, right? So I mean,
yes, 50 years plus.
Yeah.
So we get in there, mess with the drums a little bit, set them up. Everybody, he's like, all right. So Without a Song was the first. He's like, all right. So we're gonna start in 2, and then we're gonna go to 4/4, and maybe go back to 2, and then just go, swing time. 4/4 swing time, he says. I'm like, okay, all right. And so, you're sitting there, you're getting the direction, you're listening to what he's saying, and then it's just like, we start, and I'm like, oh, this is like the jam session. It's just like the jam session. There's like no difference. You're playing, and it's just natural.
Yeah.
There was really nothing,
Wasn't anything
there
mystical about it, right? It's just...
Yeah, there was no polarization. There was nothing about it. It was just like, I feel like I'm playing a jam session. We just played.
Yeah.
Then we played another tune, and then we played a calypso.
So just the three of you?
It was, it was Bob Cranshaw, Sonny Rollins, his nephew on trombone. And that was it. Oh. I don't even think the percussionist was there. No, the percussionist was not there. And man, so we finish. Bob gets off the stool and hugs me. I was like, hey. He's like, man, that felt great, man.
Oh, well,
and
that's encouraging.
Like,
right. You're like, okay.
I was like, whoa. I was like, okay. And so then Sonny takes me in the back, and he talks to me. He's like, I want to get in touch with you. I don't know what these other guys are going to be like first, but, I'll get in contact with you and let you know what's happening. And and just keep listening to the music, and I'm gonna send you some music, but I want you to keep listening. It was like basically sit by the phone, I'll eventually call.
Right.
That type of thing. It was literally felt like that. That's what he was saying. So he did. He sent me, like, literally a couple of weeks later, he sent me maybe like 12 CDs.
Wow.
I still have all 12 CDs.
kidding.
Of course, I dumped them into digital, but it's just
Sure.
like, I got all 12 CDs. I was just like, wow, okay. And these was mostly the ones that came from the 70s up through the 80s. Nothing older than the 1970s.
Oh, really?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I was like, oh man, this is interesting. It's just like, really, like nothing.
Wow.
From that, no, not the bridge, not Tenor Madness, none of that.
None of it.
Not 4+.
Why do you think he did that?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea. This is just like, this is what he was. It was like, okay.
Yeah.
Or what is that? Not 4+, but Colosso. The Colossus.
So did your phone ring finally?
No, so 2006.
So how far along was that since your audition?
So the audition was February, whenever they had IJE.
Okay. Yeah,
So
it was like February,
January, February. Yeah. So then November 2000, that same year, he called me. I did 2 gigs. I did one in Champaign, Illinois, and then I did another one. Then we went from there. 2 days later, we went up or a day later, or whatever, we went up to Minneapolis, Minnesota, St. Paul.
Okay.
And did some at the university there. And none of the gigs were good. None.
On your end?
On my end.
Oh, on your
None
end.
of them
Yeah,
were
I
good.
was gonna say.
And so then he was like, well, I'm going to call you for 2007. So he did. I did 4 or 5 spring dates, and then he wanted to use somebody else. So literally I got dismissed twice from the gig. And I came back, every time I came back, it was good.
Yeah.
It was perfect. It was just a thing of just like, different people wanted different things in the band, and Sonny was listening.
Right.
He had an ear to like hear and understand where other people wanted to, as far as the band. He had an open ear and open heart to it. So he would sometimes choose a different guy. So, which was
Makes
great.
sense.
And then, he went full term with me for a while.
Yeah.
It was great. It was great.
How long were you with him?
Off and on 2006 to 2008, and then 2008 on. But even then, I got almost replaced toward the end. But then
That's like the nature of the beast, right? In that kind of a situation, it's a whole different situation.
I was one of the longest. I would have stood as one of the longest standing with him.
Yeah.
In history, and then so history says that, and then history says I was the last. Well, I was the last drummer to tour and record with him.
Right.
So
That's amazing.
yeah,
That's amazing.
which is nice.
But doing that opens up the door for a lot of other things, right? But
It
you're-
does, and but he would talk about how the music should and could go. He was like, man, the days of where this person do a solo and then the next person does a solo. He was like, man, that was for then. He was like, now it should be so much more going on, where the music should be constantly happening within the group.
Yeah.
And that's how I approached movement.
This new recording.
Yeah, where the music's constantly going. And so
Well, and you can hear that in this, like we talked about at the beginning. You can hear that now with the whole context of where you came from and your experiences. This makes a whole lot of sense. This is like. Do you think that this recording really epitomizes the way you think and your concepts? And,
I want the soundscape to be a revolving soundscape of colors and sounds and intuitions, and not be so deliberate to or delegated to this person's doing a solo and this person's doing a solo, maybe this person's doing a solo, because when the people are listening and watching and involved in it, they're constantly seeing colors and seeing and feeling different things. And so why can't it be that same way on the stage?
Yeah.
Where we're constantly, and I'm not saying that we need to be jumping around or even not jumping around. Sometimes you can dance and get away with it and be fine. But I think there's an involvement of music that needs to happen first before we start jumping around.
Right.
Like, allow the people to escape. That was one of Sonny's big things. Even when that audition, that was one of his big words. He's like, when we go on the stage, we're allowing the people to escape the daily grind of life.
That's the purpose of
that's the purpose
what a musician is doing at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So our motives should be to allow people to travel beyond the where they are. You know, and that's why they pay their money.
That's why they come out to see you.
That's why they take their time. You know, you don't want to waste people's time. Again, it goes back to that. You don't want to waste people's time. They paid their money, and they really do. They genuinely want to have a good time.
Yeah.
You know, and so why not give them the time of their life for an hour?
That's it. Well, that's it. That's it. So everybody can get more information. KobieWatkins.com is his website, and then his group website is KobieWatkinsGroupTet.com.
Yes.
And we're going to link all that up below.
Yes.
And of course, you are coming in and out of town. Now you're teaching in Idaho, so you're doing flying back and forth.
Yes.
And then, are you teaching in North Carolina too, privates? Or
I
is
do.
It private stuff?
Yes, exactly right. Yes. So I do teach privately, but I also teach a big band with the Philharmonic Association. It's an association that started as a orchestral, youth orchestral musicians under the leadership of Hugh. Sorry, I forgot your name, Hugh. I love you. But it's Hugh and Margaret, and they started this. And students came to them and they wanted to develop this orchestra. So the orchestra, this was 1988.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
so it's been going since then. And 2005 developed the jazz portion of it. So there's the Triangle Youth Jazz Ensemble, Triangle Youth Jazz Orchestra, and I teach the Triangle Youth Jazz Band, which is just younger and people that haven't had as much experience, but they can read, you know. And my thing is to teach them how to swing, you know. And that's, of course, TYJE and TYJO, you know, Greg Gelb and Lisa Byrne. We are the three conductors for those, you know, bigger bands. And then they have a lab band for starters that want to learn how to improvise and want to learn how to just play jazz music. And that's what's her name? Geneva Palmer, or Jen Palmer.
Okay.
She teaches that. And these people, you know, my cohorts in North Carolina, but it's a great organization. And so we do every Sunday, and we have these children. They come out and they play.
I think it's interesting, man, because I mean, you know, you have all of this playing going on. You're teaching college and everything, but you're still interested in teaching the youth too.
Yes.
That you obviously, even from the Vandercook days, I mean, you still enjoy doing that.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yes, and then I have two boys at home, so it's like I'm taking from what I'm teaching them at home or what I'm learning from them, because I'm constantly learning from the small boys at home, and I'm applying it to how I actually teach music. You know, it's really interesting. You know, everybody wants to learn how to solo, but nobody wants to learn how to like play with a good sound.
Right.
You know, and that's Ray Brown. I just saw on YouTube. Ray Brown was like, most important thing bass players is not a whole bunch of licks, but your sound.
It's true.
And it's like drummers, same thing, and horn players, same thing. Your sound. How do you sound when you hit the drums? And are you pulling the sound out of the drums, or are you playing into the drums and beating the drums and leaving them with, you know, dimple?
The fact that you're teaching the young kids and stuff, I mean, you know,
it's so important.
That's amazing.
It's so important to give to the youth, no matter what level or you know, what level of race, color, creed, or affluent or non-affluent they are. They want to learn music. Music doesn't have a rich race or religion to it.
No.
It's like music is what it is. And so you teach them that. You teach them music. You teach them what it can do and what it can't do.
Yeah.
You know, this is the way a note sounds. This is the way a note should not sound, you know. And let them play it out of tune so that they know the difference.
Right.
That was a big thing in Vandercook, one of the choral director. He was like, no, sing out of tune on purpose so that you know where to go. You know, if you don't know what it sounds like out of tune, how will you know how it sounds in tune?
I knew I was out of tune. I sang out of tune a lot. He gave me a lot of practice.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, no.
You know,
So I probably should work on singing in tune sometime, I guess. Huh?
all right. Try to flip the coin a little bit. Yeah.
I left before he told me about that part.
All right. That's funny.
All right, I'm so glad you came in, man.
Man, thanks,
it's awesome
man.
having you.
Awesome, thank
This
you.
was a great interview, and folks, of course, you can see the entire issue at ChicagoJazzMagazine.com. We're going to link everything up so you can get in touch with Kobie if you have any questions. Obviously, pick up his new release and find out when he's coming back into Chicago. And of course, if you're watching this anywhere throughout the world, check out his tour schedule. He's coming to a city, I'm sure, near you at some point.
Yes.
And until next month, thanks for watching, and we'll see you then.